Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden. I hope you all are having a fantastic day today. So today I wanted to do a little bit different of a video. What I want to build up a playlist or a repertoire of plant profile videos and put them all in one spot on my channel so that if anybody needs some good ideas for plants to plant in the garden, they can just go check out that playlist and look at a bunch of plants that I love, that I have lots of experience with, or that I'm just obsessed with. So this is going to be one of the first videos in that plant profile playlist where I just go over the details of the plant, how to care for it, how to handle it, what, the specifications of that plant. And I had to kick this whole series off, of course, with one of my absolute hands down favorite plants in my garden, which is Mystic Spires Blue Salvia. I love this plant. I'm sure you all know that. I'm sure I've talked about it a million times on my channel, but I just can't say enough about this plant. It is just one that I just can dependably rely on throughout the growing season in my garden in a bunch of different areas, shade to sun. It just thrives for me. I live in zone 9B, so we get hot consistently in the summer around 100 degrees, and this plant can handle it like a champ. It is so wonderful. Mystic Spires Blue Salvia, the parent plant, is actually Indigo Spires, which is another salvia. And Indigo Spires is a little bit more robust than Mystic Spires Blue. Indigo Spires just keeps growing and growing and growing throughout the season until it basically falls over with the weight of itself. When Mystic Spires Blue Salvia was bred, it was actually a mutant of, it wasn't bred, it was actually a mutant of Indigo Spires. They found that this plant was shorter, stockier, and more robust. And I just love it. I think it's the perfect size for my garden. It gets about 2 to 3 feet tall and 2 to 3 feet wide. It's hardy zones 7 through 10. And so I think that it just really makes a huge difference in the garden, and it's one that like I said, you can depend on. As I was doing my research on this plant and finding all the specifications on it, I found that there is actually a new variety of this, type of salvia. It's a smaller variety. It's called Misty Spires, M-Y-S-T-Y, and it only grows to about 12 to 18 inches tall, so even smaller than Mystic Spires Blue Salvia. And it's supposed to have stockier stems, broader leaves, and it's supposed to bloom just as well as Mystic Spires Blue and Indigo Spires. So I am going to keep my eye out for that version, hopefully get my hands on it, and I will let you know once I get a little bit of experience with Misty Spires. So the water needs for Mystic Spires Blue Salvia is about average. I wouldn't say it's completely drought tolerant because I do have to irrigate it throughout the season, but it's definitely heat tolerant. As my heat in zone 9B gets hotter and hotter and hotter, this plant just ends up looking more and more beautiful. It can handle the intensity of our sun here. It is deer resistant. It doesn't say, it's not deer proof, of course. If you have really hungry deers, I feel like they might chomp on this a little bit, but it is deer resistant and it can handle all pH soil types, right? So it's a pretty versatile plant. My Mystic Spires Blue Salvia starts blooming in about April, and it goes all the way through until the first hard frost, which I think is amazing. Now, you do not have to deadhead this plant. The bloom stalks, when they bloom out, they still are this beautiful, blue, dusty blue color. So you can absolutely leave them. Last year, when I had this plant in my garden, I did not deadhead them one time, and I was perfectly happy with them. This year, I am going through and I am deadheading them, and I do have to say I like it a little bit better. But if you want just a plant it and forget it type plant, then you definitely can use this plant. Once it hits hard frost, and really I usually do it a little bit before hard frost, the leaves start to kind of, you know, they kind of show their wear and tear, and I will cut this plant down to about 6 inches for the winter time. There's a nursery by my house where they actually grow this plant, and they say that you can just cut it off right at the leaf canopy and leave that over the winter time. But I really enjoy having the fresh new foliage the next season, so I like to just completely cut it down, and it will come back. If you live in kind of a lower zone, like I said, I'm 9B, this is hardy down to a zone 7. I would say if you live in zone 7 or 8, go ahead and mulch up around it over the winter just to really protect those stems if you cut it back as far as I do. So they say Mystic Spires Blue Salvia is a full sun plant, but it can handle part sun, which is around 6 hours of sun. I actually think it can also handle part shade, which is down to 4 hours of sun. I have it here. This is under my crepe myrtle garden bed. It only gets the hot afternoon sun. Not only can it handle the hot afternoon sun, but it can handle not very much sun at all. Of course, the less sun that you put it in, the less it's going to bloom, but you can see the plant behind me. It's still blooming perfectly well. So I just love how versatile this plant is. I am actually planting this plant, and I have a couple more. I'm actually planning to put in my shade garden bed in my backyard. And that shade garden bed is pretty interesting because there's some areas that get sun, there's some areas that shade all the time. So I had to kind of think of plants that can handle a wide range of light requirements, and Mystic Spires Blue Salvia fits the bill perfectly. As for companion plants for Mystic Spires Blue Salvia, my hands down favorite companion plant for this plant is Helen von Stein lamb's ear. I just think that silvery, soft foliage of the lamb's ear contrasts so beautifully with the dark green leaves of the Mystic Spires Blue. I think it is just absolutely the perfect combination because they both have similar watering requirements and similar light requirements. So I lean heavily on that combination in my garden. I also think planting this Mystic Spires Blue Salvia with something like a Rudbeckia, I think that warm, a yellow tone will look so beautiful with the cool blue of this, and I think that combination would be absolutely gorgeous in your garden. The other plant combination I'm kind of obsessed with this plant would be underplanting this plant with a white annual, something like a Supertunia Vista Snowdrift. I just think it would be so pretty. I actually think I'm going to do that next year, plant some of these and then underplant with the white, and it would just be a nice, cool, calm color scheme that is just going to bloom all season long. So the one drawback to the Mystic Spires Blue Salvia that I find is that it is in the mint family, so it does have the square hollow stems, and they are quite brittle. They can break off very easily in, say, a windstorm, or if you're gardening in the area and you accidentally bump your butt into it or something. I have had the stems break off in the middle of the season, and it kind of just leaves this gap in this otherwise nice spherical rounded plant, and it's quite a bummer. So I would say that is the drawback of this plant, is that the stems are so brittle. So how I handle that is if one does break off, and it has happened many times before, I will just go to the store and I would just buy a new one, and I would just kind of put it right in the spot where right next to where the stem broke off, and it will just kind of give the plant a little bit more rounded of a shape. It's not perfect, but it will kind of mask it for the rest of the season. And these are pretty cheap. They're not expensive plants at all. I think I spent about $7 on this one, 1 gallon size, at my local nursery the other day. This plant is incredibly pollinator friendly. Whenever I come out in the morning, there are big bees all over the plant. They absolutely love it. Plus, the hummingbirds love this plant as well. Here's a clip of a hummingbird that I was just watching go to town on these blooms. So this is a really good pollinator plant to put into your garden. For fertilizing this plant, it's pretty simple. It does not require a lot of nutrients to thrive, at least in my garden. What I usually do is right before growth starts in the spring, I will put an all-purpose fertilizer just around the stems that I cut off the season before, and that's pretty much it. If I think about it, I will do another round of all-purpose fertilizer as the season goes on, but this plant is it just loves growing. I just don't think it needs too much fertilizer. Sometimes when I'm fertilizing my annuals and I'm kind of spraying them with the water soluble fertilizer, I will come over and I will spray this one, but it's not something that I put on my schedule. I don't really depend on that weekly fertilizer. It's really the beginning of the season all-purpose fertilizer that I really focus on for this plant. So as a recap for Mystic Spires Blue Salvia, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous blue colored salvia. It's a perennial. Season of interest is spring all the way through the first hard frost. 2 to 3 feet tall, 2 to 3 feet wide, hardy zones 7 through 10. Average water needs, all soil, all pHs, and deer resistant. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more plant profile videos. They will all be in my plant profile playlist. Hopefully it can give you all some inspiration of plants to plant in your garden. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get into your garden today.